We will walk in the light, the beautiful light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright. Shine all around us by day and by night. Jesus, the light of the world.
Matthew 5:13-15. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but it is thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on the hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house.
We human beings often get agitated. We can even work ourselves into heightened states of anxiety. Sometimes we even begin to cooperate and to enable conditions of being agitated, which leads to more distress and perhaps eventually a condition of fragility. Fragility is not sensitivity. In my research, sensitivity has some roots in our nature as we're born. It's more nature than nurture. In itself, sensitivity is not a bad thing. In fact, good relationships demand a healthy sensitivity. Fragility is something else. It's a loss of control over what makes me, me, or you, you. This loss of control of self sometimes makes the living of one's life burdensome. And fragility starts with something other than just being sensitive. I think fragility begins when something other than God's loving view of who one is starts to take over. Maybe we might think that someone else, like I, have a better understanding than God. It all started small with me. I was doing some public writing many, many years ago, and someone important at the time who had something to say about my job grew resistant to what I was writing. So I was called into this person's office. They closed the door. This is not good, I thought. Have a seat, I was told, and I did. My latest public writing was produced. This is really not good, I shouted to myself. And for the next 10 minutes, I was led through my writing line upon line and told how my words reflected badly against the company. The other person even took personal offense at some of my words. When this review was finished, the person said, "I can fire you outright." It sounded so final. It kicked up the worst fears about failing, embarrassment, becoming unemployed. Another story began. But the other person just continued. I've checked with my colleagues, HR, the works. This could happen, but I won't. Then I had to do some concessions on my part, and I left the office. But as I was about to leave the office, I felt humiliated. I was in another story now, another state of mind, state of heart. Something had shifted. Traumatized I was, victimized I felt, complete loss of control in this employment relationship. Started not to like this person. Soon I began to develop these ever more complex revenge videos in which I was the avenger, always in the right, and the other person's reputation and health suffered in these little videos in my mind. These revenge videos in my head began to get longer and then re-edited in my imagination every day, in which I starred, directed, and produced them. I'll show you. The videos began to take more and more hard drive space in my mind and came to dominate my conscious thoughts. The entire episode was now a thing. That's what fragility does. Forgetting who we are, whose we are, we succumb to messy, incomplete, and alien views of who we are colonized to think that we are or should be. And these views can take over. It all ended well. Several years later, when I was reading a book on Buddhism, I got to reflecting about how bad karma, when left untreated, becomes more habit and takes up a larger and larger footprint in one's soul. I suddenly thought about that office visit and the aftermath, and the god-awful truth hit me right between the eyes. I was suffering so much in my revenge videos, fantasies. And then two more truths hit me very hard. One, I did not know how much I was cannibalizing myself, spending all this psychic energy to construct and then feed on the lies that I had been diminished by this person. And second truth, the other person hasn't the first clue about how much suffering I was in, how I was being consumed. That other person was not suffering like I was. And that was the amazing grace moment. I was yanked off of one destructive story about me and my relationships and placed back on the original story, the God story, that I'm already good enough, already enough. And there's not a doggone thing I can do or not do to change that good God story. So is fragility a character flaw? I don't know. I just tell my story, and maybe it'll soak into your narratives about yourself. And, well, just see what happens. I'd be happy to walk alongside with you if you were needing to get in contact with me. Thanks very much for your attention.
You don't have to be productive, and you don't have to change the world. You're already so loved. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be simple. You don't have to read all the right books by the right people. You're already so loved.
You don't have to be beautiful and thin with an articulated and ironic fashion sense. Not at all. But if you're into that kind of thing, well, that's okay too. You don't have to be healthy in your mind or in your body. You don't have to be in full-time vocational ministry. You can watch horrible television, or you can be proud of your televisionless home. You can be artistic or scientific. You can spend your life traveling to meet beautiful people, or you can live and die in the town where you were born.
You don't have to conform to someone else's ideas of holy or acceptable. You can be from the wrong side of the tracks or the gated community, suburbs, urban, or rural. You can work with your hands and your mind, your back and your brain. You don't have to be educated, not at all. You don't have to have a degree or letters after your name. You don't have to know the right people and boast a carefully curated Instagram feed with the famous and the beautiful and the influential. You don't have to be conservative, and you don't have to be liberal. You don't have to identify with the certain political persuasions on ideology of sexuality or science or socioeconomics or foreign policy. You can be a social justice warrior or, not.
None of that moves the meter of your belovedness. God won't say, okay, now, I love her just a little bit more because, look, she is finally out of debt or thin or powerful or influential or tireless.
Your family story can be beautiful or terrible, or like most of us, a bit of both. Perhaps you're famous or well known or influential, and that's okay. Perhaps you're quiet and unknown. Maybe you hate that. Maybe you love it. You don't have to be a mother or a father. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be single. You don't have to want children or raise children. You don't have to be sober or clean. You don't have to give away everything you own and take a vow of poverty. You don't have to be prosperous either. Church or no church, or a certain kind of church only. Whatever.
You can doubt or feel great certainty, even if that certainty is in your doubt. You can believe in God, doubt God, seek God. You can be someone well acquainted with unanswered prayers. You can carry chronic pain or dance through life. You can be introverted or extroverted. You don't have to love yourself or even like yourself. You are loved. Whether your life looks well put together from the outside while hiding a hot mess inside, or vice versa, sometimes on the same day, you are loved. Morning lark, night owl, sinner, saint, child of God, siblings, all of us, we are loved.
You have nothing to prove. You have nothing to earn. Sure, any one of those things might change because you are loved. You may know already where God wants to breathe change and wholeness into you, bringing your life more into line with the person you were meant to be all along.
Love can and does and will transform us in every way. Our ideology, our opinions, our habits, our values, our priorities, and our very names. But it's not a prerequisite or a requirement. It's not behavior modification. It never is. Not for love. Love has happened, and it is happening, and it will happen. It is kind and patient towards you.
You are already so loved. You aren't earning a breath of love or tenderness more than what you already have just by breathing, just by existing, just by being here in the wonder. Your name is already written in the lines of the hands of the universe. Your star breath of dust, and you are beloved, intimately, faithfully, wholly. It's your lifelong rock. You are known. You are loved with delight and abundance, with choice and desire, with covenantal love. You may feel it or not.
You are so loved.
You are so loved.
You are so loved.
I am as fragile as a pinch of salt, which is to say, I can bring my flavor to any story and change it forever. You are as fragile as a single ray of light, which is to say, you can make the world shimmer, brighten any day, show up any truth that tries to hide in shadow. What is it to be fragile? There are days, I confess, that I am hyper aware of my own fragility, when I feel as if one harsh comment, one push, could send me scattering in 1,000 directions like the seeds of a dandelion. And yet, here I am, whole and unscattered, sometimes to my own surprise. There are times when we speak of the fragility of human life, when a life ends too soon by illness, or by violence, or by sheer accident. And yet, every one of those lives left a mark upon the earth, a mark upon human history. No one passes through this world without changing it. I remember holding my child for the first time and being overwhelmed by both the tininess of her body and the hugeness of her existence. I remember in those first few emotional days thinking of a million things that I could get wrong that would harm her. And I remember a nurse telling me that a newborn baby is made to withstand the inexperience and ignorance of new parents. There's a paradox then, that we are both fragile and tremendously strong, vulnerable and also profoundly resilient. I lost a friend recently to a vicious cancer that took her body down even while her spirit remained bold, powerful, steadfast. She was just my age, so not so young, but not so old either. Her daughter is only a few years older than my own. In the minds, hearts, and eyes of those who loved her, she has certainly gone far, far too soon. And yet I don't believe a one of us would use the word fragile for her. Life persists. The thistle will grow where nothing else will, pushing through concrete on roadsides, under bridges, in places where we need to be reminded that life matters, that love wins, that fragility is less than it seems. Life is found in the deepest caves, far from sunlight, in the depths of the oceans where the pressure is immense. When did we learn that we were fragile? When did we allow fear to keep us from our growth, from our adventure, from our joy? When did we fold into a self-protective huddle? When did we allow fear to turn us against each other? When did we forget how to thrive and how to thrive together? When did we forget that our lives depend on each other, that we are at our strongest when we join together, when we build community, when we support one another instead of tearing each other down? We learn these things over and over again from the very beginning, when Cain thought he knew these things and turned on his own brother, and even before, when Adam and Eve first tasted something of death. In each life, we learn at some point in our childhood that we are not invincible, that life contains much adventure, but also much danger. We learn of our own vulnerability, our own fragility. But do we also learn of our own strength, our own resilience? Do you understand what it took to bring you here? 2 lives had to intersect to create you. 4 lives created those 2, 8 created those 4. In the past 300 years or so, there have been about 8,000 lives, give or take, discovering one another, joining together, passing along their genes and their stories to create you. Such strength, such resilience. We don't even know the totality of our own stories. We will never know how we have changed the world, not completely. We will never know how we have inspired someone, how we have altered a conversation, how a simple suggestion may have changed the trajectory of someone else's life. But we know that it does happen because other people change our lives the same way. There is nothing phantom about us. We do not drift through unseen, unnoticed, leaving no trace. Our stories are woven together into the story. And in this story, we are each known, each seen, each precious, each loved. What does Jesus tell us that we are? We are salt, he says. 1 grain may seem so insignificant, but put that 1 grain to your tongue and you will taste its strength. It hardly takes any at all to change the flavor of a dish, and leaving it out can ruin the dish altogether. We are light, he says. 1 flickering flame, 1 lamp. But no shadow can prevent a light from showing what it tries to hide. No darkness can swallow light. It is only our own imagination of fragility that holds us back. We are told we are weak, insignificant, powerless, fragile. But that is the greatest lie. What we are is loved, created with purpose, powerful, called. You are called to enrich the world with your own particular flavor. Bring your sweetness, your earthy bitterness, your saltiness, your spice. You are called to enlighten the world with your own particular brightness. Bring your sparkle, your shimmer, your shine. You are called to love and to be loved. And you do. And you are.
the closest I've flown to the face of a war was into Sarajevo on a wing and a prayer. And the bombs didn't fly from the hills anymore, but the people were haunted. There was fear in the air, and the city was cratered from the shells and the rounds, like rain on a puddle, like the face of the moon. And they buried bodies till they filled up the ground. In the grass on the highway, they just ran out of room. But the people have gathered in the middle of town with the songs they hold sacred of a time coming soon. From their different traditions, they are singing the sound of their future together, and they're singing in tune. And all the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle. All the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle. I got word overseas that an old friend had died. She was bright-eyed and laughing, gone far too young. My spirit and body felt hollow inside, and I wanted to cry out, but no sound would come. So I walked through the night in a dangerous town, where the gunfire can sound like the 4th of July. But by chance I looked up, and the stars shining down tore the wind from my lungs and the rain from my eyes. Because just like my friend, those stars are long gone, and that light has been shining for thousands of years. So the light that we shine seems to go on and on, like those rays across the cosmos, to refract through my tears. And all the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle. You can say love is a powerless tool, that the real world is heartless, and that hope is for fools. But I've watched for the sunrise, and the truth is I have found it's not light that is fragile, it's the other way round. And all the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle. Oh, the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle. Believe me that all the darkness in the world can't extinguish the light of just one candle.